Chapter 8. Distraction. Every step I took away from her became more and more labored. It was as if I was running through wet concrete, and the farther I went, the thicker it became. How I wanted to go back. To climb into her bedroom and beg for her forgiveness. It wasn't far, and I knew time would mean nothing if I was going towards her. I ached to hear her voice, even her screams of anger. The punishment would be heavenly if I could only be with her again. But my punishment meant nothing compared to what she'd been put through in the past 8 months. No, I had to keep going. Away, let her go. Just one more step. City lights appeared before me, but I had no idea where I was. The faint sound of cars announced some kind of civilization, and I turned toward it numbly. She would be safe. I was far away from her. What was I going to do without her? My head cleared, remembering my self-imposed mission, the hunt, to find and kill Victoria. The name and the red-haired memory it conjured freed a tiny corner of my mind of the yearning. I had a purpose, be it an empty one, and I found, if not peace, then perhaps direction in it. Victoria. Alice's final vision had pointed the way to the remote wilderness in Montana. The hunt would take me even further away, hopefully dulling the piercing pain Bella's absence left in my chest. The highway came into view, its green and white signs announcing the city of Olympia ahead. It'd taken much longer than usual to run here. The sun had already set, and the dark, moonless night had settled on the town. The flights to Billings had long since left. I'd have to be more creative with my transportation. Running would take too long. I needed a car. I followed the road into the city, running in the trees along the shoulder for a while, but veered north as I recognized the streets. There was a dealer nearby. Over the summer, Jasper and I'd come out to look at the new Mustangs. I wondered if they'd gotten the new Celine. It wouldn't be as finely tuned as a Volvo, but it wouldn't smell the same either, like her. That scent, so sweet. My knees buckled, but I caught myself on a light pole. Transportation, hunt, Victoria. My feet moved forward. The lights at the dealership gave the row of cars an unnatural blue tint under their fluorescent glow. I walked straight into the showroom, spying the black car that would be mine. With its racing stripes and slotted hood, the car exuded power, speed. The opposite of inconspicuous, this car screamed for attention, and my memory betrayed me again. "We try to blend in," I'd said. "You don't succeed." Her voice floated above my thoughts, teasing me with the double meaning of her words. "I will succeed," I vowed to myself silently. "She will be safe, and eventually, happy." The conspicuous nature of the car didn't matter anyway. If I was to track Victoria, I would have to follow her ways. Nomads traveled almost exclusively by night, hiding during the day. In the dark, the car wasn't as eye-catching, and I needed the speed. My last indulgence. The floor was quiet tonight, and the salesmen were clustered around the reception desk, undressing its female occupant with their thoughts. The girl was unremarkable compared to my Bella. My thoughts wandered back to her brown hair and chocolate eyes before I caught myself. Victoria. Must find Victoria. "Ahem. May I speak to the sales manager?" I asked, interrupting the men's fantasies. The 3 men stopped their ogling and faced me. The tallest one matched my height, and he glanced at his partners. What does this kid want? His thought was echoed in the others' heads. Grateful for the interruption, the woman smiled at me. "I'll call him." The tall one held up his hand, interrupting her. I picked his name, Stan, out of the snickers in the others' heads. "He's with a customer. What do you need? A glass of milk? Your mommy?" "I need this," I said, pointing at the high-performance car beside me. "Right, and you just happen to have 60 grand tucked in between your school books." Stan glanced back at his friends, and they all laughed. I didn't have time for this nonsense. "Please interrupt the sales manager and show him my card," I said to the receptionist, ignoring him. Her eyes glazed over as she nodded her consent, holding her limp hand out to me. "You really shouldn't do that to people," Bella's memory whispered. I withdrew a black credit card from my back pocket and started to pass it to her in a painfully slow human gesture. With great restraint, I let the loudmouth snatch it out of my fingers. "What the hell is this?" Daddy's credit card? We're the big man on campus tonight, aren't we? What is this? He looked at the card. A black American Express card? You really are clueless. What's this made out of? An empty soda can? Where'd he get this? At a joke shop? Oh, shit. His buddies recognized the significance, and one ripped the card out of his hand and headed to the offices at a run. The other threw an elbow into Stan's ribs. I think you better tone it down. He straightened his tie and squared his shoulders. Would you like to test drive the car, sir? He asked, becoming every bit the businessman. Stan snorted. You're going to let him into the car because of that? He threw a thumb over his shoulder at the man disappearing into the back hall. Absolutely. Centurion card holders receive only the highest respect here at Olympic Ford. I'm Andrew, by the way. He held his hand out, but I ignored it. He awkwardly waved toward my car. This is the new 2006 Celine S281 Extreme. It is equipped with the standard 6-speed manual transmission. A Centurion card. Right, Stan snorted. You're what, 18, 19, kid? I don't think so. Shut up, Stan, Andrew thought. In the back, a copy of my credit report had just finished printing, and the sales manager was picking his jaw up off the floor. Maybe things would move a little faster now. My attention returned to Andrew. I'm quite familiar with the specs of the Celine. Is this one equipped with Sirius? That would explain the black bump on the trunk lid. Yes, it is, sir. We installed it yesterday. Stan laughed, thinking that I must be pretty full of myself, but another man in a suit appeared behind him with my card. I'm sorry for the impolite treatment, Mr. Nichols. I'm Fred Hutchins, the director of sales. This is the car you're interested in? Stan looked at his boss. You are not serious. But Fred shut him up with a single finger. Should I fire him in front of the customer or not? Yes, I'm in a hurry and would like it gassed up and ready to go as soon as possible. Fred grinned, knowing his secretary was madly typing in the back. I've started the paperwork already, Mr. Nichols. Would 45 minutes be too long? You are welcome to wait in my office, unless you'd like to inspect the car further. It is in pristine condition, I assure you. Your office would be fine. I glanced at Stan, whose mouth was hanging open, and smirked. He would be joining the ranks of the unemployed in about 30 seconds. Right in here. Can I get you something to drink? No, thank you. The receptionist noted the fit of my slacks as I walked away. Andrew was hoping I'd mention his attentiveness. I'll be right back, the manager said, as he backed out of the office and closed the door. Before going to the secretary to speed her work, he fired Stan, and gave the other 2 salesmen raises. The thoughts of the humans weren't enough to distract me, and when the receptionist started doodling on her message pad, her hand morphed into Bella's in my mind, looping and swirling across the paper. Tomorrow, Bella would be in class, drawing the same circles and diamonds, as bored as I would be with the mundane subjects. The urge to join her brought me to my feet. I wrung my hands as I paced, trying to erase the memory of her warm skin against mine. Remember how easily her delicate skin is broken, how freely her delicious blood flows. James's face appeared, recalling how Bella's blood calls to every one of my kind. I savored the sound of his head being torn from his body, wishing that it'd been my hands that ended his existence, not Jasper's. All 3 of the nomads had longed for my love's blood, and I still owed Victoria for that. Her evil, crimson-eyed face smiled at me, obscuring the image of Bella. As the clock on Fred's desk clicked off the excruciating seconds, I fought to keep Victoria's impending death at the forefront of my thoughts. 38 minutes later, I was behind the wheel of my new vehicle. Fred offered to give me the tour, vehicle orientation he called it, but I waved him off with a $100 bill and drove away. I hit the freeway with my foot to the floor, and as the speedometer topped 150, I actually smiled. Speed was the last vice I would allow myself, and this machine didn't disappoint. Once out of the city, I killed the headlights and pushed the car to its limits. At this rate, I would reach Bighorn Canyon easily before dawn. As I passed the occasional car, I caught the driver's shock, assuming they even saw me fly by at well over twice their speed. Slow down, blinked through the mind of a semi-driver, bringing back Bella's fears of riding with me. He drives like a maniac. Every thought, every action came back to her, taunting me. Don't, she whispered in my mind, begging me to return. The gaping wound in my chest migrated to my back. as if talons were ripping at me, trying to pull me back to her. No, I am stronger than that. She will be safe. Safe from Victoria. My nerves calmed a little as I focused on the map I'd studied of the terrain surrounding Billings, but still, Bella whispered to me. I had to find some way to drown her out, to stay centered on tracking, or I'd be crawling back to her within a week. I looked at the radio, barely glowing in the dash, and ran through the list of stations in my mind. Music would bring her memory back to me, even stronger, but was there something else I could listen to? Sports? Not at this time of night. Talk radio? No, that was an audio version of the drivel I heard from human minds all the time. Country western? Too many songs about losing your girl. Then I found the listing that would be perfect. Thank you, Emmett. I flipped on the radio, muting it as I scanned up to channel 43. Rap. I couldn't stand the sound, but as my brother had effectively demonstrated, it filled the extra space in my brain that Bella had been trying to occupy. It even made it difficult to concentrate on Victoria, but I wasn't constantly tempted to turn around and head west, back to my love. Victoria. Her crimson eyes floated in front of me as I raced down the dark, empty highway. I thought back to last spring, limiting myself to the one personal encounter I'd had with her. Her thoughts had been devious and visceral. She had no use for others, save for her own entertainment. When she and James and Laurent had approached our baseball game, the sport was far from her idea of fun. What is the point of searching out a bunch of vampires? They have nothing to offer us. Surely none of them can rival James, she'd thought. She lived for the chase, reveling in being both prey and predator in the games she played with her companions. James had been her measure for everything as she regarded us, once she'd gotten over the shock. 8? In one place? A permanent settlement? What kind of vampires are these? And their eyes? No matter. Her thoughts mirrored her companions as she set her surprise aside and analyzed our strengths. Males and females evenly balanced, mates no doubt. Perhaps there's some fun in that. She immediately discounted all the women as fighters in her mind, assuming her experience would allow her to best any one of them. She regarded Bella as the weakest among the women, even before learning of Bella's humanity. The fear in Bella's eyes had been so clear that night. The road blurred before me as her wide, timid eyes obstructed my vision momentarily. Then her eyelids closed, showing me that last moment. No, I won't go back, I shouted at myself. 24 hours hadn't passed. Get a grip. The thumping on the radio changed, pulling me back to the present, and Victoria's thoughts returned. Her arrogance was her weakness, I decided, though she had a keen awareness of those around her. She had regarded each of the Cullen males carefully. Emmett's strength was obvious, as was Carlyle's leadership. Look how they stand there, pretending that we are nothing to them, she thought derisively. The tall blonde, he is the true fighter. He stands tall, but his eyes and his scars say more than words. He is the dangerous one. Finally, she regarded me. He and the weak one, they are together. No scars, but there is something about him. Wiry, possibly fast. She reviewed the terrain they'd covered to get to our baseball field, marking an escape route in her mind, should it be necessary. When the wind betrayed Bella's true, fragile nature, Victoria had become as ecstatic as James had, but I stopped listening to her at that point. Without a word, James had known that she would follow the rest of my family while he followed Bella. They'd used this strategy before. James is the point of the spear, she is containment. He valued her as a hunter, and enjoyed watching her indulge in violence, almost as much as he coveted committing it himself. How would that translate, now that she was alone? She'd easily scouted Forks. Clearly, she was capable of interacting in the human world without giving herself away. Would she continue to look for challenging kills, or stick to the easy pickings? James had been the tracker. She bowed to him when they'd hunted. After seeing Alice's view of Victoria's next meal, the easy route seemed the likely one. My own nomadic days came back in a rush as I tried to put myself in Victoria's place. Exposure was always an issue, but even in today's world, disposable humans were easy to come by. Here in the wilderness, hunters and hikers would be her staple, but she wouldn't stay in one area for long. Would she remain in the north, possibly hunting around the fringes of the cities, or move to the south and the more populated, poorer communities? In my executioner days, I'd hunted around the large cities, preferring the north, where I rarely ran into other immortals. The cities attracted the criminals, the ones I'd not only killed, but punished. Every one of my victims had earned his fate, but justifiable homicide is still murder. Bella deserved much better than me. It doesn't matter, her memory chastised. Victoria. Surely time would numb my memories of Bella. Stop it. Victoria. Hunting. Focus. Victoria wouldn't be as picky with her victims as I'd been. The murder scene I would visit first was the site of a grisly killing, according to the reports. The hiker, a young man, had been badly beaten and mauled. Victoria had to disguise her feeding, but I knew that she relished the torture as much as the feast. Hopefully, there was still a trace of her scent left, so I could confirm my theory. If I could identify her hunting pattern, then she would be easy to track and predict. The body had been found near one of the campgrounds a week ago, but it hadn't rained or snowed, so there was a possibility of picking up a trace of Victoria. With only an hour until dawn, I couldn't dawdle. Pulling into the campground, I parked just outside the cordoned-off area. The main camping area was scheduled to reopen for the weekend, according to the notice posted at the gate. I detected no traces of blood, but nature was very efficient at cleaning up her leftovers. Following the trail that had undoubtedly been left by the human investigators, I found the scene. There was no crime tape. There'd been no crime, at least to human eyes. A single yellow stake marked the victim's resting place, in the center of a small ravine. I tried to put myself in Victoria's place, finding the human, then toying with him, hurting him. Throwing him against a tree? I circled the stake, searching, then finding his hairs, lodged in the bark of a cottonwood tree. Taking a deep breath, I smelled her faintly, her scent, mixed with the victim's. Carefully, I inspected the tree again, spying a single droplet of venom near the hairs. She must have taunted her prey, inciting even more fear in him before delivering the fatal strike. My stomach clenched at the thought of such unrestrained violence. The victim had just been married, I'd read. He was not someone who deserved such a horrendous fate. She would pay for this crime, as well as her acts against Bella. The anger kept me from delving into the past as I made one more circle around the area. Her casual scent was gone. It'd only been the strength of her venom that left any trace at all. But I knew where she was headed, who she'd been hunting next. As I dashed back to my car, I also recognized that I wouldn't make it in time to save the helpless camper. Thankfully, a few broken clouds littered the sky to dull the sunrise. I was one of the few cars leaving the campground so early in the morning, but there was a sizable line heading in. Had the sun been free to blaze down on me through my untinted windshield, I would have been a spectacle that few would have forgotten. The cloud cover increased the further east I drove, freeing me from being trapped in my car until nightfall. This latest kill would be harder to find, though I had an idea where to start, based on Alice's vision and Google Earth. I spent the afternoon running across the bushy terrain, following the tributaries of the rivers, looking for the one that held a battered tent and a dead body. There were only a few humans in the vicinity, hunters, and I gave them a wide berth. As I wound my way around them, I heard a gut-wrenching scream in the distance. As miles flew under my feet, a new urgency filled me. I may be too late for the human, but Victoria could be waiting over the next rise. "No, Glenda, no!" I crested the hill and stopped. The thoughts came not from Victoria, but from a human man, the companion of the female hiker I'd seen murdered in Alice's vision. The air was silent, but for his crying. My quarry had long since gone. As I searched the perimeter of their campsite, I listened to the man's laments. "Oh, Glenda, I'm so sorry. I should never have left you alone. Oh, God, why? She deserved to live. Why didn't you take me? What will I do now? I should have stayed. I should have protected you. There is nothing left for me." He had no idea what had taken his wife's life, had no idea that if he'd stayed, he would be lying beside her, dead. But his words ran like ice through my veins, feeding the pain in my heart. What if Bella gets hurt, now that I'm gone? What if I could save her? She's so fragile. What if I killed her? I growled to myself, remembering her blood on my lips. The concept seemed impossible. I loved her so much. But I remembered my first reaction when she'd cut her finger. It wasn't to save, it was to attack. I was just as much a monster as Victoria. Worse, because I disguised my predatory side so well. Victoria, focus on the hunt. How I wished I could find the nomad. Killing her would be like killing the worst part of me. I let the animal in me loose, her scent guiding me like a beacon. Only hours had passed since she'd been here. She couldn't be far. My feet sped me through the trees, leading me to the place where I could release all the hatred I held for myself. The space between the trees widened, and Victoria's scent faded. She'd followed a straight line out of the forest, avoiding much of the leafy foliage that caught her aroma as she passed through. I got one last strong whiff as I followed her path through an isolated patch of young maples. The murmurs of a faraway human mind broke into my concentration. The sound of his radio echoed in his thoughts. At the south end of 20 Mile Creek, just east of the NRA border, corner en route. Tango Romeo 5-9er Roger. ETA 8 minutes, the human replied, as the sun broke through the clouds. Sliding to a stop, I left a trench in the hardened earth before skidding back into the cover of the last trees. The mind I'd heard was a pilot, and he was heading this way. Reflexively, I looked up, scanning the sky for the chopper. "What was that?" said the co-pilot, and I knew he'd seen me. "I don't know, a flash of something. It's on the way. Keep your eyes peeled." Damn it. I buried myself in the group of saplings, scolding myself for being so careless. Both men scanned the ground below them as they flew over, but saw nothing. The pilot's thoughts turned to their mission, to check out Victoria's last kill. "Mark this location on the GPS. We'll come back after we scout the scene of the DB." The helicopter turned in the direction I'd just come from, and I surveyed my situation. To many, the sight would be spectacular. Ahead of me was literally nothing. No trees, very little grass, just flat, barren land, bathed in bright sunshine all the way to the horizon. For me, it was only an unremarkable end of the trail, and a stark reminder of the emptiness of my existence. It'd been cloudy when Victoria had crossed this area, so nothing stopped her from continuing on. Now that the sun had come out, the barren, scentless land before me may as well have been an impenetrable wall. My eyes crisscrossed the brown earth, searching for some trace, some flash or glint that would show me where she was, but there was nothing. Nothing but brown. "Brown is warm," Bella said, in my mind. Clenching my fists as if I could physically punch back the memory, I followed my own scent back into the forest, carefully darting from tree to tree. Once the branches masked the sunshine, I veered north, giving the search and rescue helicopter and the approaching ground personnel plenty of space. Victoria would live another day. My hunt would not be as easy as I'd predicted, but at least it would occupy me for a little while longer. Without Alice's visions to help me, I had reading and research ahead of me, providing more distraction, I hoped. As I ran back to the car, the man's grief echoed in my head. Though I tried to push his sobs away, they persisted, growing louder, twisting and changing in my mind. The sound became my own grief as I imagined myself crying over Bella's lifeless body, but my hypothetical sorrow was overshadowed by guilt. Seeing the bright red crescent at her jugular, knowing I was the one who'd taken her life, I became both murderer and victim in one fell swoop. Tearing out of the parking lot, I took out my frustration with my monstrous existence on the road. In the end, it didn't matter. I'd never be that close to Bella again. I wove in and out of traffic, trying to outrun the awful truth. Bella would live a long, happy life, and then pass on to an eternity of paradise, without any further interference from me. I would never experience her warmth again, hear her laugh, see her blush, ever again. I deserved nothing less. I only prayed that there would be an end for me as well. Ashes to ashes, after all.